If you are just opening your brand new 3D pen, here are 8 things that you need to know. Number 1 reason people give up on 3D pens is that they are trying to work on the wrong surface. Because while the plastic sticks to some surfaces perfectly, to others, not so much. Which also applies to the surface of some tools you may wish to use. While some projects work on good adhesive surface and you think, oh, I'll try that. When you try to do the exact same thing on less adhesive surface, it will fail miserably. And you may assume it's your pen or your skills, which is very off-putting and not even true. The best way to test different surfaces is to write something in cursive script. If the loops are stripping off too easily, it's not adhesive enough. Ideally, the project should stay stuck to the surface until you decide it should come off. And then peel it off with a thin spatula or a palette knife or even a regular knife. I mostly use plexiglass, sprayed with matte acrylic finish. Untreated plexiglass is normally so adhesive you wouldn't be able to remove the projects at all if you didn't spray it. So spray both sides so you don't accidentally use the wrong side. The same spray also works on surfaces that are originally not adhesive at all. So that is a way to make them more 3D pen user-friendly. Surfaces are a complex issue, and I already have 2 videos on the subject that are linked in the description, should you need to learn more. Number 2 tip that will make your 3D pen life easier is get comfortable. Don't tape your pattern to the table and then your surface over that. Because remember, you will be tied to the electric socket. Not to mention there are all those filament loops hanging from the pen that will get in the way if you need to reach at odd angles. And it will drive you nuts. Awkward setups make for awkward lines. I personally prefer to tape a clear sheet protector to the bottom of my surface. That will hold the pattern and then tape the whole bundle together to keep it together as one unit. That way you can change patterns quickly without retaping it every single time. Now you can spin it freely on the table so you can easily reach all the parts of the pattern. If you at some point feel that you want an upgrade, you can clip this whole setup to a turntable, and then you can spin the project towards the pen as you go. Makes the workflow a lot faster. Yet another upgrade down the road would be a turntable with a central axis that will help you get your project 3D by providing that 3rd dimension upward. Like so. Now, ready to make some lines? Just rest your pen on the surface and drag. Let the line flow out of the pen. Always pull the line. Never push it in the direction you are drawing, or you will get a messy, thick line with a groove in it. This may seem obvious, but it comes up more than you'd think, especially with lines that have a lot of loops, like a script, for example. If you need to cross another line, just drag over it. And if you need longer lines super straight, you can use a metal ruler, like with any other pen. If you need to run across more than 2 lines, it can get a bit messy. So you may need to start from that point and work outward to avoid building a big plastic bump in the center. As the design gets denser, you start to need to cross way too many lines that are in the way. And at that point, it may be easier to just land on the surface at the anchor points only, and otherwise hold the pen just ever so slightly off the surface in the air, so you are not bumping to your previous lines all the time. You don't have to finish the whole shape all in one go. Just draw only as much as feels comfortable, and stop, and then reposition your project to reach it better. Drawing smaller pieces and spinning the project often will help you avoid that problem of going in the wrong direction, pushing into your line that we talked about earlier. Just make sure you do land at all the anchor points where you need the lines to securely attach to each other, or you will have random pieces of the design fall off later, because just resting the line on top of each other won't attach them securely enough. Where you want them stuck together, you need to make sure you land there. By the way, this also applies to any lines you want to join in the air. Where you want them stuck together, you have to make sure you land there. And speaking of lines in the air, connecting 2 points in space is called bridging. And you can bridge horizontally or diagonally, any which way you need. But whenever you get a chance, bridge downward, especially if you are just starting out. That way you don't fight gravity but work with it. One limitation of bridging is that you can only make either a straight line or a sag that will give you a downward curve. If you try to make upward curve or a loop, the gravity just won't let you. So how do we make a custom curve? Here are some options. Option 1 is making all the complicated circles, loops, and scrolls on a flat surface, because that is as comfortable as working with any other pen. And once it's solid, you can lift the parts up and bridge downward between the layers. Once it's done, it will all be in the air. Option 2 is working on a curved surface. Just make sure the object you are drawing on has a 3D pen-friendly surface and can take the heat of the pen. Option 3 is putting an upward curve in the path of your line. Option 4 is bridging with a straight line, which is the only way you can, but before the line cools down, stretch it with some tool to create a custom curve. Takes a bit of practice, but don't fear if you don't get the curve right the first time. You can trace it with a pen, which will resoften it and give you another chance to get it right. Option 5. Use clay to stretch the lines over. Clay is always the right shape and size because you shape it just the way you want it. This puts more precision into the process, especially in complex shapes, where you need curves that are both convex and concave within the same object. Plus, the clay has an added bonus that it will provide support for putting in the fill and other parts of the finishing process. And then you just remove the clay and reuse it. Not all clays are suitable for this, so check out this video. The link is in the description. Or if you don't want to bother watching it, just start with plain old Play-Doh. Tip number 6. You don't have to keep every line you make. And I'm not just talking about when you mess up, snip it off and redo it. That's obvious. I am talking about those moments that you will deliberately make lines you have no intention of keeping, but you need them temporarily to help accomplish the next step. Here I'm making a start of a 4-legged animal. And I just made 4 straight legs to get it off the ground. I am planning to use the front legs as they are, but the hind legs are more complicated than these straight lines. So I will need some new lines that I will actually use, or some parts of them anyway. Of the 2 lines I just made, I need to keep only this triangle. And then I can get rid of the rest. Once I have the new hind leg all in place, I can get rid of the original straight one. And then do the same thing on the other side. Another example of temporary lines are the centering lines in symmetrical objects, like vessels or baskets, where you need to keep the parts centered precisely over each other for accurate assembly. And when you're done, you just edit them out. Tip number 7. It is important to know when to run, when to walk, and when to stand still. I have to confess, I have been lying to you. Remember this curve from earlier? This is how long it actually takes. And then you wait and wait and wait until it's solid enough to ever so carefully remove the support. It takes approximately 15 seconds for the plastic to solidify. And in the meantime, you sit there and hold. And because that doesn't make for an exciting video, all 3D pen videos, including mine, discreetly edit that part out. Anytime you finish something, you need to wait until it's cold before you remove it, otherwise it might bend and distort. Anytime you make a connection, you need to wait before you turn the project to the other side or even move the spacers. And then you wait again before you can remove the spacers altogether. And when you are done, you wait again before you touch it. That's a lot of waiting. And while I was doing all this waiting, it occurred to me there are many useful things you could accomplish during those 15 seconds that the plastic is still soft. If you move fast, you can shape things before they cool and solidify. You already know you can make those upward curves. And if you don't like them, you can fix them, even one section at a time. You can resoften small parts, like an ear and attach it. And then go back and reshape the tip. You can make precise sharp angles. And attach seams that would be ordinarily too hard to reach with the pen. There is a lot you can do with those 15 seconds. And we have not even yet mentioned the most important one, instant smoothing. As you work, you will find that 3D pens tend to produce characteristic, heavily layered textured finish. And you may prefer to have your cube look more like this. There are different ways of smoothing and sanding your project. You can even make customized multicolored veneers with any design that fits the occasion. However, most of these techniques require use of some form of additional heat appliance to help you resoften the plastic. And while it is fun to know that this is possible, these techniques do add a lot of additional time to each project and are beyond the scope of a beginner's video. Plus, you may not want to hear that now that you have a 3D pen, you may need a bunch of additional heat appliances to even use it. However, if you are curious, here is a video that goes over what all these things can do for you. The link is below as usual. The more relevant question for a beginner is, what are my surface options if I have nothing but the pen? Option 1. Make lines, not surfaces. Not everything has to be solid. There is a magic in creating spaces defined by just a few lines. Sometimes you just want to show off the contents of your container, and fewer said, the better. Possibilities for holiday and party decor are endless. For instance, nothing says Christmas quite like a stellated icosahedron. Option 2. Embrace the textures. If you can beat them, join them. Make your animals furry, lizards scaly, and birds fluffy. If you want it smooth, smooth it while the plastic is still soft. You have 15 seconds, so have your next move planned, tools ready, and go for it like you mean it. Obviously, this works best for small-scale work. Or smooth just a few small strategic parts to create a contrast with the other textures in the project. If some parts are smooth, it makes textures right next to them look way more intentional. In effect, you are saying, see, I can do smooth. I am just choosing not to, sometimes. You can, of course, attempt to instantly smooth even bigger projects. But larger the scale, the more likely you will need an additional heat tool to clean up the imperfections. If you are truly just starting out, you might want to watch this video next. Plus, here is a whole playlist on the basics. Now, go and make something.